Today's conversation with Dr. Lauren Hodges is going to impact your heart and your mind. She literally ministered to us. She spoke to Coach Ivana and to me. She challenged us to be conscious of how we show up, and she's going to do the same thing for you. She's going to challenge you to keep the mission of your life in front of you so that you can show up as the best version of yourself, not just for yourself, not selfishly, but unselfishly for the people that you were made to impact. I'm telling you, watch this show all the way to the end because there's some points that will change your mind, your heart, and your life. Welcome back to Aspire Higher with Charles and Ivana Bailey. Before I say another word, go ahead, hit that like button. You ain't even got to hear what we're going to say for the rest of the show. Hit subscribe, share. We have an incredible guest today, and I'm telling you because every time we tell you, they're always amazing. Yep. This one I have been trying to reel in for months. She travels everywhere around the world, this United States, and she is an incredible powerful person. She is literally a doctor. She speaks on wellness and performance. She has a business called Performance on Purpose. She's an author. She has a book that is literally taking the world by storm. Less stress, more calm. And I know you know, if you hear that title, this is for you. So please welcome with us Dr. Lauren Hodges. What's up, doctor?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you here.
Finally,
yes, we made it work.
Well, your world is so busy, and of course, the world is getting busier. So tell us quickly about yourself.
Yes, thank you. So I've been in my world. My world is, I consider human performance sciences for a long time, which makes me feel a little old, but almost
seasoned, not old.
Seasoned. Thank you. I'm going to
welcome.
use that. Like 17 years-ish. And I started in the freelance consulting space in this space. So I kind of have these like double subject matter expertise, curriculum design, learning sciences, and then human performance sciences, which is all things well-being, energy, how we show up, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, kind of like dips and deep dives into those. Yeah. And so I was consulting in that space for a long time, building learning experiences for people in the space, the global leaders in human performance, building courses and digital assets and stuff. And then just one day felt called and led to start with a friend, a longtime friend of mine, this company, Performance on Purpose. December 2019, we launched. And as you know, the world just shut down. And
what a time to start.
It was. And interestingly enough, in our world, that was a time when the world of resilience, stress management, that area of our company was very needed, and it did accelerate us forward. And so we will be celebrating 5 years.
Congratulations. That's incredible. Yes. Well, you've had the honor of working with some incredible global leaders. And I mean, you don't have to necessarily name names unless you like to, but tell the people a little bit of where you've been. Where have your adventures taken you?
Yeah. So I've worked with, like I said, some of the global leaders in this space are the OGs in this space are the Human Performance Institute. They're actually right here in Lake Nona.
That's right.
Yeah. They were founded early 90s by two men, Jim Allaire and Jack Gruppel. And they were bought out by J&J Learn. And right before that buyout, I came on board, helped them sort of update and refresh some of their courses. Right. That brought me to Thrive Global, Ariana Huffington's company. I was helping her build some of their bigger courses, Thriving Mind, Thriving Performance. And then my personal favorite, Accenture and Estee Lauder companies have been working. I still work with Estee Lauder companies in their space and help them build their own version of a flagship course in their company, a legacy course in the energy management sciences. And I'm very proud to say, actually, we just won 3 Brandon Hall Awards, which is a huge deal in the HR learning. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, it's a celebrities.
Accomplished.
No.
Yeah, I mean, accomplished
Doctor,
life.
right?
Yeah. That's so funny. For
No,
those of you that don't know, Doc was making the joke earlier. She says that one of her friends is like, you're not a doctor, but she is actually a doctor. But it is a good way to keep herself in check and humbled,
That's right. Yeah,
That's so funny.
yeah. Had to throw that in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, sincerely. So talk to us about this space because there's so much that we can dive into.
Right.
Your book,
So much. Yeah.
your book, Less Stress, More Calm. What led you to do this, to take this on?
Yeah. So back when I was working with Thrive Global, that company, and I mentioned that there was a course, Thriving Mind, that we built. It was a digital well-being course based on some research that was coming out of Stanford Medicine at the time. There was researchers there who were studying patients with mental illness, depression, and anxiety, and noticing that there were detectable biologies to depression and anxiety, how it shows up, how it's actually mapping in our brains, the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors that we experience. Wow. And we were creating a course out of that, which, again, timing, the course launched March 2020 with Accenture. Wow. Went on to become the most popular course in Accenture company history. I mean, People Magazine was featuring it. It was a big deal.
That's huge.
Not because of what I did.
No, but certainly just the impact that was being made.
What we created, the science that was being leveraged, the innovation coming from that, and just the need in the world at the time. It was just such a blessing, the timing of all of it. But that led me to fall very deeply into that research. I wanted to understand more about the upstream part of that. What if we could get ahead of this, which was the premise of the course, and get to know who we are under stress and what our patterns are, because we all have default neural pathways of thought, emotion, and behavior under stress. Everybody's different. Depends on so many things. Where we were born, our culture, our geography, our race, our gender, our parents, our caregivers, our past bosses and relationships. It all shapes and molds who we are today. And I decided to, based on some of our experiences working with clients and the different, what we call stress personalities that we see, we decided to very lightheartedly create 8 different stress personalities. And so the book is almost like a choose your own adventure. You deep dive into the science, flip to who you think you might be, and read up about the science behind it, but also what you can actually do to intervene so that you're in control of the stress personality and not the other way around.
Sheesh, post-pandemic, I think we all still need that.
Oh my gosh, all day, every day.
And talk to us a little bit about some of those stress personalities. I think that people listening would definitely want to know.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, oh my goodness, off the top of my head.
Or let me, I'll read some.
Yeah,
sure. And then just tell us maybe the foundation, or maybe even the audience can identify with themselves.
Yeah.
So in the stress personality types, we have the fighter, the distracted, many people are this, the worrier, the freezer, the negative self-talker, the pleaser, the runner, and the thriver.
That's right.
Those are huge.
Yeah, they are. So I mean, without spending the whole time talking about all of them, getting to know how you show up first and most often, because your audience can probably hear all that and go, it's election day. I'm all of those before coffee this morning, right? But we all have a default. Now, that could be a little bit context dependent. Maybe who you are at work might be a little different than who you are at home, of course. How I am as a mother and wife may be different than how I lead a business and interact with my team or clients. What I think about, how I initially react to a problem. All that to say, each one of those has a really predominant way that we show up or manifest that stress personality.
Of course.
The thriver is who we all seek to be, and we have those moments. It's just that person who they're not absent of stress. There's a huge part of the book. Stress is here. We all have a stress personality. We're all going to default. It's our biology. What protects us, keeps us alive, keeps us going. But the thriver is that person who knows what that is, recognizes it almost in the moment, and can redirect with their own strategies, whether it's reframing a word, a prayer, whatever it is. We call it stress resets. Any intervention that brings you from fight or flight to rest and digest. So the resets that you choose or that you already kind of inherently know, they really tend to map to what works best for you. I'll give you a great example. So if my husband is a worrier, which he totally is, And I am a runner, which I totally am. I'm going to want space when there is, a stressful situation. But he likes to lean in, move toward the threat, process, talk it out. He's a finance guy, so he's got a spreadsheet for everything. Yes, I want to logic my way through this. Connection initially works for him, where for me it doesn't.
Right.
The other side of that is like, let's take meditation as an intervention.
Sure.
Amazing practice all the time. Doesn't matter. It just changes the brain for the better. It's a great practice. But the type can really depend on how you show up. So a worrier, if you go tell them, hey, go be alone with your thoughts.
They're just going to be spinning.
Right.
Spinning.
So that unstructured meditation time is not necessarily most beneficial for that stress personality. So maybe it's something guided, something to bring them back to the present, and then maybe leaning in and talking, where for me, my head is going, I don't want to talk to anybody. So a little bit of unstructured time, that type of meditation is very beneficial.
Interesting.
So it's not a blanket statement to say, oh, well, here are some stress reduction or management tips for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. Some of them, sure, sleep, nutrition, exercise, all of us can benefit. But that's where I think the research gets very interesting.
I love that.
Yeah, incredible.
And was it that you noticed that there are so many individuals that fall into these categories that you wanted people to understand kind of like the scope behind it? The science behind it? Is that how you developed all these different ones? Because as I'm thinking about it, in adolescenthood, even in childhood, it would be so important to understand, like, his stress, my stress, we deal with it differently. But if I had a guide, if I had a system in place to understand me, then I'd be able to understand the environment and even the control of that as well. Yeah. So did that, in a sense, was this something that you noticed humanity fits into these categories and I want to help people understand it?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. There was predominant patterns for people. This is based on the research we were doing at Stanford was doing.
Wow.
And that's not an exhaustive list. This is not some scientifically valid. Right. In fact, I was at a speaking engagement in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and I didn't have the fighter on there. And I was doing a keynote, and I said, like I always say, hey, you might invent one for me today, because this might not be you.
Evolving science, yeah.
Woman came up after, and she goes, I think there's one more you're missing. I'm just get angry. And I said, oh my goodness, you're right. I was putting that in another bucket. Right. And I readjusted the whole thing because she was right. That is a pretty persistent. So then I had to go back to the research, make sure there was validation for that. Yes, there are people who predominantly react as a fight, obviously. I don't know how I miss it. In fight or flight. Right. And there's totally different interventions for that type of person. So, there could be others out there that I just I haven't seen yet, or, but it is based on the research and then a lot of our experience. We've worked with so many clients and coached them through things. And so they've helped us also sort of formulate some of these and helped us come out. And there's stories in the book of certain clients who displayed a certain stress personality and how they manage it now.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
You want to do yours?
Well,
marriage counseling.
I know, right? Yeah, let's go ahead. But I guess there's a question that needs to be asked then, and you did such a great job setting it all up for anyone who's watching and listening. So the question is how does a person become more aware?
That's a good question.
So y'all are fit. I can see that.
Yes,
you go to the gym.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. He's like, thank you.
It's hard work this temple,
you build a muscle.
Yes.
Rep after rep.
Yes.
Any muscle, any habit. And the habit of self-awareness is a muscle like any other. And so the way to catch these, you're never going to conquer them. Stress reduction is an absolute myth. Stress is out, and it's not a bad thing. Stress could be great.
I do believe
it's a catalyst for growth.
I really do agree with you on that.
Listen, you've probably heard of allostatic load. If we didn't have any stress,
absolutely,
we'd have no growth. We would probably be very
vegetative,
and not engaged, not purposeful. Right. Stress is not the problem.
Right.
Stress in the absence of recovery, that's a big problem. And if we get to know who we are under stress, then we just assume what's called a higher internal locus of control, a greater control over our circumstances. And kind of lost my train of thought there. But rep after rep, what you end up doing if you want to go through this, it's not like a 21-day training program or anything. It's just a very, very, very simple thing. You set a reminder, use Siri, use tech for, to your benefit. Every day, just check in with yourself. How did I show up? Here were some stressful moments. What were the predominant thoughts, emotions, persistent emotions and behaviors? Maybe seek feedback from a VIP in your life about that. Just do that for a couple weeks. That act of reflection back actually strengthens your ability to call on or bring awareness to that behavior in a moment.
Right. Makes sense, yes.
So you're just building that muscle of that is self-awareness in a nutshell. Wow. Another way to do that is when you start to feel stressed, you could pause and just literally, hey, I'm in a stressful situation. Sure. Let me pull out my tool belt of things that work for me and only me and intervene that way too. So, and then the only other thing I could say there is, that's getting ahead of it, is planning for the future. So we've talked about reflecting back. We talked about in the moment.
But looking ahead.
What about visualization, looking ahead? Who do I want to be? What is the best version of myself? And how can I be that more of the time? And that actually does help you strengthen catching who you don't want to be in the moment.
Yeah.
Because those are the red flags, the signs and symptoms. And so, or what puts you in a state where you're not your best self. So visualization and anticipation of the future is another way to build self-awareness.
Wow.
Past, present, future. You tackle it one rep at a time.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah.
I'm going to do my reps.
Yeah, well, we have to. I think we owe it to ourselves. And we speak to you always. We don't just bring guests on to talk to you. We're here learning the same. And you've heard us talk about it. We have our own therapist. We speak with each other. We're working through life as human beings as well. And these are great things you can do and put in practice right now. So I would challenge you. We're not done with the conversation, but I do want to challenge you. Think of where you are. Think of who you want to be. Start to assess how you react or respond. Give yourself grace, as Ivana always says, but then be practical in whatever steps you may need to put into your daily life that you hadn't. Yeah. Because until you change those actions, you can't change who you're becoming. So that's what I believe Dr. Lauren is saying. And the beautiful thing about this time we're in is the research has been done. You have a lot of practical tools. You have a lot of people you can reach out to, like Coach Ivana, myself, Dr. Lauren. So I would also say if you're having trouble or if you tried it in the past, kind of like the fad diets and it hadn't worked for you, do what she said. Find a VIP, someone in your life that can be that voice for you that you can't always be for yourself. In our book, we write about, there's an analogy, the whole book is kind of premised around flight. And there's one particular place where we write about attitude adjusters. People don't recognize that in planes, that is an actual device that keeps the plane level. It is called an attitude adjuster. And so sometimes what we don't recognize is that those people, just like that piece of equipment, is meant to keep us level, to keep us grounded, so we can center ourselves, because otherwise we may be tilting too left or too right.
Love that.
And so what matters most is how we actually treat those attitude adjusters, because they're very sensitive devices. And sometimes I think, leading into my next question, when we have VIPs or people in our life that call us out or question us or maybe help us see another perspective, we don't always respond well based on our stress personality.
No.
Would you mind maybe just, even if off the cuff, talking a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that feedback is a fickle thing, and receiving it can be an interesting muscle growth situation at the same time. You have to be. This is a muscle like any other. The ability to receive feedback. Calling out and seeking feedback from the right people. Very, very important. I think sometimes we overseek or overask. At least people like me tend to do that. And negative self-talkers, for example, they maybe tend to seek the wrong feedback. So anyway, seeking feedback from the right people, the VIPs, the people who will be not just your cheerleader.
That's right.
Abundant cheerleader, but your objective. They'll give you the feedback that you need that's constructive too.
I love that so much.
Now that gets hard in the workplace. Sometimes you don't have that leader. That can be a challenge. That's where I think therapy always comes in great. Not that that person can observe you in everyday life, but at least you have a sounding board if you don't have someone at home or at work. But yeah, I think that feedback in general is a powerful tool. And then the other side of it is being receptive to it.
Yeah.
No one that I have ever met in the history of humanity can receive feedback in fight or flight, you know, in a stressful situation. So real-time feedback takes a lot of strength and a lot of, you said it earlier, grace for yourself, that I can be both full and wholly me and perfectly perfect. And I could use a little bit of adjustment here and there. And so I have to be receptive to that. In order to do that, and I mentioned earlier, I have to recover first in the moment and get back that, nervous system regulation. I got to go see. So I say this from a parent, from a boss perspective. If you're trying to deliver feedback, make sure that person isn't in a fight or flight moment.
You know, you're saying a lot right now.
Right.
Absolutely. That is wisdom.
If you're receiving feedback, make sure you're not in that space. One trick, this is a friend of mine, Jenny Susser, longtime colleague, said this to me once. I thought it was the best little hack for if you find yourself in a fight or flight moment, you're trying to calm yourself. She said, ask yourself a stupid question. And I was like, okay, tell me more about that. It sounds so silly. What'd you have for breakfast? What color are your socks? What's your mom's birthday? What she's doing is trying, and she works with a lot of athletes, professional athletes. She's trying to recruit blood flow back to the new brain, because fight or flight is a primitive
and it does stop that flow.
It does. It actually engages, you're forced into readjusting those, that fight or flight back, nervous system regulation. So anyway, my point being, if you are trying to build the muscle of being more receptive to feedback and you recognize my runner's showing up right now, I'm not in a great place. I'm gonna probably say, give me 2 minutes. I'm gonna go breathe. I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna journal, whatever I need to do to come back and then get that feedback. That's not always realistic. Sometimes we have to be receiving feedback real time.
In real time,
And that, listen, the more you practice it in the opportunities where you can get space, the more you're going to strengthen the muscle of being able to receive real time. Some people have a phrase or an action, a deep breath that they can use to do that real time. Professional speakers and things. Broadcasters, professional athletes.
That's
the best.
That's literally what they have to do.
Literally real-time feedback in the moment. My son is 14 years old, but he's a kicker for football. Talk about real-time feedback. You miss that field goal, and you got to be ready for the next play within 2 minutes. And you got coaches yelling at you, you got parents yelling at you, which is wild at 14. And then you've got players that are upset, maybe
the fans.
So how do you readjust in the moment? So he has to come up with those strategies too. So anyway, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but
it was actually wonderful.
And to hear that, I'm already thinking about when it comes to the central nervous system and the regulation in that moment. What if you're the freezer? How do you regulate?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Freezers are a tough one.
Yes,
I would say of that group, the most volatile. There's 2 types of freezers, productive and unproductive. The productive freezer is the person who can stuff all of it and go through and move. And they are highly efficient, high performers. I'm talking your C-suite, CEO,
of course.
first responder, trauma, ER, physicians or nurses, military. They can just be in a very high pressure, turbulent, high demand, VUCA environment and still stay aware and able to adjust. That's great. Good feedback receivers.
Of course.
The challenge is you cannot stuff emotion without processing it later. And if you continue, you can't stuff negative emotion without unintentionally stuffing all emotion. So you can become numb, freeze, shut down in a metaphorical way. The other freezer, unproductive freezer, is it's like the couch, you get on the couch and you're like, I can't even,
binge watch,
you're watching Netflix, you're like, you got a long list to do, you're like, no. They can really quickly lose their sense of why and purpose. That's another group. But I say that to say, for that freezer, that can be a really challenging situation.
I can imagine. Absolutely.
Depending on the type of freezer you are, I'd say feedback could be a challenge or not.
Interesting.
And then if you stuff those emotions because you're, wired to be fighting in a sense, in that moment of freezing, I'm thinking like, well, post-traumatic stress and the disorders that come with that. Did I say something there?
No. It's just, that's a whole, that's like a level up conversation, right?
Absolutely. Definitely. Next level, right. Yeah. She always wants to raise the bar.
You really want to go there. I said I got quotations around the.
but understood. Go ahead.
But no, it's okay if it's too. But I was just thinking about sometimes when you don't regulate or reframe in that moment and just stuff, it can become a disorder.
Yeah,
it can become,
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's the danger she was expressing before, is that we have to be mindful that our stress personality, though they help us to adjust because it can be a positive thing. The negative side of that is if we're not truly aware, it will change how we show up. Yeah. And that changing how we show up can have negative consequences in our own lives. Exactly, and I completely understand that, which is actually something I wanted to ask you, and I'm looking forward to asking this from you. So there's a popular buzzwords, show up, right? Mm-hmm. You hear this everywhere. A lot of keynote speakers and people in our field say it, but I believe that some people are really confused on what that means. Yeah. What does it actually mean to show up? So then we can actually talk to our audience about how they can show up maybe in the way they want to or in a better way.
I love that question. That's such a good question. I'm going to back up 2 seconds and just say, all the conversation we've been having is about everyday manageable stress, right? So when we do get to that space of PTSD, mental illness, that's a wiring issue in the brain. That's not something we have control over. So I don't want to ever send the message that if you're managing a mental illness, just read this book and you got it.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So please, go see a professional. Exactly. Totally different subject. So I always want to say that, and I always forget. So I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Show up. Yeah. Doesn't that mean different things for everybody?
Yes.
For me, for Performance on Purpose, the company, because we're more than the stress, less stress, more calm. We're managing the ability for an individual, team, or organization to perform at their highest potential. Improve and move their bottom line, whatever that is for them, move their mission forward through this intentional training programs, coaching, digital assets, all that. For me, showing up means having clear mission, clarity of that purpose, awareness of when we're off course. I loved your analogy, and the training and ability to readjust through intentional rituals, one rep at a time, whether that's managing our energy physically, like I said, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but also the ability to recognize the mindsets that could be getting in the way stories that you would tell, whatever that is, in order to be your best, show up at your best. For me, that definition is I have a clear vision of who I am when I am at my peak performance potential. I'm putting it in air quotes because I don't mean how much money I'm making. I don't mean how, when I say perform, these are the words that I describe myself at my best. This is my higher calling, my mission. How often am I staying on course of that? And that to me is showing up. So when I am watching my son kick that ball, I am fully there. Yeah. That is definition of success for me. When I'm in that 5-minute drive to practice and I have nothing else to focus on but him and investing in him, that's when I mean showing up. Yeah. When I'm with a client, I am fully here. Right. And in order to do that, I have to have that clarity of mission.
That's right.
Tell the right story to myself. Which means sometimes some tough love and grace, both. And then always training for success, whatever that means for me, whether it's like right here, right now. I was in the parking garage. I was just sitting there being quiet with my thoughts for 5 minutes. If I don't have that space, I can't be who I need to be. I just got off a work call and I don't want to show up here late, whatever it might be, that's why I'm early and I spend 5 minutes, either in meditation or prayer or stretching, whatever it is. That's training. When I say training, that's what I mean. So anyway, that's my definition of showing
love
up
that. Yes.
is my ability to fully align with my mission as often as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gems, and gems. And for our audience, if you need to show up differently or even just need to reevaluate how you're showing up, listen to what she just said. She just gave you gold nuggets, because sometimes people think showing up is just being there,
right,
or
you
fighting
present.
through the day. And
Right.
yeah, I showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how did you show up?
Sure.
Like, we have to reevaluate that selves for ourselves,
Yeah.
and also reframe how showing up could impact or be a detriment to ourselves.
Sure.
You know, and having that buffer, even 5 minutes. It could be simple homework like that. Maybe you need to take 5 minutes a day to just be present, be grounded, and then move forward.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I love to, if you're listening and really thinking and contemplating some of the things that Dr. Lauren has said, is we always encourage you to recognize, and that's the whole premise of this show, that it's not always the tangible things that are the most important things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if you notice, this woman has spoken to huge companies, global leaders, Fortune 500, all these things, but showing up for her may be, I'm present with my child.
I love that.
100%.
Yes.
Showing up for her is not, did this client pay me this huge contract, but am I present enough and am I aware enough of myself to know that my presence is impacting their life? She said that the measure of success is not in the performance measurements, but how she is performing personally, how she feels about herself.
Right.
And that's what we are always trying to remind you of. When we say set higher aspirations, when we say aspire higher, we're always reminding you that there's a higher calling.
Yeah.
There's a low calling, which most of us in this time, we measure our success based off our income or our increase, the car we drive, status, who we're with, who we're around, all these things. But that doesn't really, that doesn't show who you actually are. Because there are people that have those things and they go home every night empty because they know that they didn't show up. The human that they are, the person that they are, the being wasn't there. They just existed in an environment. So we want to challenge you to remind yourself that showing up has nothing to do with what other people are looking at to gauge your level of success with, but everything to do with what you have on the inside of you to measure who you are successfully being. There's a difference.
Yeah, well said.
And just to tack on to that, because
Sure.
that was so well said.
Thank you.
If you still aspire for all of those wonderful successes,
Go for
a
it.
business that grows and revenue and the big clients, it will come with tethering to the best parts of yourself and fully investing in who you are and your mission. It always follows. I have, first of all, if they need proof, the research is there. Businesses outperform other businesses when they are mission driven. Teams outperform. Individuals outperform. And it has never failed me to be the best version of myself. Never. My business has never failed when I'm seeking to have impact with a client. Sometimes that means saying no to a client. Because that could be boundaries. A carrot dangling in front of you to work with.
Awareness.
Yeah. So that sometimes that means saying no. And I've had this conversation with my work best friends, you know, the fellow women entrepreneurs. And sometimes it's so hard to say no to that big number. But if that person, if you're not going to move the needle in that organization, you have to have that honest conversation and say, our values are not aligned. And that's never failed me. So, and that's a hard, tough conversation. Talk about giving feedback.
Huge, yes.
I will not name names, but there are some couple of big names that we have had to say, this is not moving the needle. I can't accept this contract anymore. And there are some that they've said, what do we need to do? And then it's a wonderful partnership. You know, it's an interesting, our field is an interesting field. Absolutely. It could feel like you're swimming upstream a lot. You know, a lot of organizations are broken. So it's not saying no to everybody.
Right, because sometimes you got to pay the bills.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, having a little bit of impact within a big organization with a small team is also wonderful. It's, again, going back to it, every decision has to be weighed against your greater mission. And so you have to pause.
Yeah.
That's why I believe so much in the power of reflection before making a decision. Just pause and ask, is this thing I'm going to do, is this moment I'm going to have in alignment with who I am at my best? And that, back to that 5-minute drive to practice.
Come on.
That means if I hear my ding and it's somebody on my team asking a question, not gonna engage.
Don't acknowledge it, right?
Because
right.
I got 5 minutes with this child.
Special person.
Right. Yeah. So, I think it all boils down to those decisions. And I so agree with what you're saying there.
Boundaries and integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity.
It takes a lot, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, of course, the thought of that, the impact being made that the person that you're spending time with desires for you to show up for them. Mm-hmm. They want your presence. Yeah. So if you're always consumed with, I got this on my mind, or you're doing this next thing or whatever, they don't feel that you showed up. You're just there. Yeah. And I think in this life right now, this is the hardest period of time, I really believe, with technology. I could say this even as a husband and with spouses and kids, where everything is always pulling on our attention. And then honestly speaking, at any second, we can give ourselves to something that has nothing to do with the most important thing or the person in our life.
Yeah, it is. It's so true. The technology is
distracting.
So distracting.
Yeah.
So distracting. And it's very hard to practice that in a home, especially with kids whose language is,
totally different.
So different.
And trained even at school.
I mean, let them cook, Mom. Let them cook. Like
these phrases.
I still don't understand half of them.
Let them cook. Like, let it simmer, let it boil. What are you talking about?
And it's sad that we're bake. Our kids and the young people we impact, they have no idea how cool all of us actually are or were.
Clearly.
But I'm saying, but we have no clue already. We've aged ourselves. We don't know what is going on. But anyway.
It really, really is. Yeah. But just, protecting that time fiercely. That's hard. That's hard work. It's probably the hardest thing we do as parents, for whatever it's worth.
Right.
Sure.
Just protecting time away from that phone right now.
Ooh,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's hard.
It's hard, but it's a necessity we have to do if we say we care about the people we care about.
That's the big thing. Well, we do a lot of coaching, and some of the hardest conversations you can have with someone, ask them, what would you never surrender no matter what? Ever. If everything was taken from you, what would you never surrender? What are they typically going to say? Family, faith, maybe. Right. And then you ask the hard question. How often are you unintentionally surrendering that daily? In what areas of your life? And you could bring people to tears with that question.
Because they recognize.
Myself included. Right. Gosh, I really am. I'm saying this, but I'm doing this. Right. And reconciling that is where really the growth the magic starts to happen. Right. For a lot of our leaders that we work with. It's such great work. It's such inspiring work. My coaches are incredible people. And the work that they do and those hard questions that they ask, delivered the right way, can have a lot of great impact downstream on someone's life. Yeah. But you got to ask it. And to yourself too.
That's right.
That's hard.
That's extremely hard. Wow. But I want maybe you can ask or provide the audience with either strategies or tips, or maybe just a question to ask during this time. We have a lot going on, economically, socially, politically, it's a lot going on, but maybe help them understand how they can ask certain things or be in a certain space to actually evaluate who they are.
Yeah. The greatest recommendation I could make, because there's a lot of stuff we talked about, managing stress.
Of course.
What's your mission? Yes. What are the stories you're telling? How are you training?
Mm-hmm.
If I could make one recommendation, fiercely protect a pocket in your day or week for reflection. Just that.
Wow.
Because there's questions we could ask ourselves, a million of them.
Right.
Am I aspiring higher?
Right.
Am I who I say I want to be? Am I showing up? What's my stress personality? Right. What are the ways that I can intervene on that? What's my mission? What's the story I tell? The surrender. What's the story I tell there? If you just protect the time, that one habit can change everything. Fridays, noon, that's my date with myself, 15 minutes, that's all I need. No screens, no computers. I don't even journal. I mean, I have a journal, like a physical journal. I don't have a device.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there saying, how did I show up this week? Where was I off course? Where do I need adjustment?
Wow.
Business wise, are we living into our mission? Are we on course of our strategy? Whatever questions pop up for me, how often was I the runner this week? What did I do? Everything comes up in that for me. And so if I'm asking a question of the audience, it is, how often are you pausing for reflection, not to do anything, just to be and let those questions come to you. Wow. And that practice will, I promise, it will change everything. Just having that moment of unstructured reflection time.
I love that. And just to speak to what you're saying, because I actually practically did that 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I was stressed going to another meeting, and I took out bubbles in my car and I started to just blow bubbles. And I was getting frustrated because it didn't work easy like when I was a child, but I did it. And in that moment, I said, how can I get to a space where I feel at peace, where I feel like even though work is coming and this is coming, I get that, but I need to reflect in a moment of just like childlike fun, you know? And sometimes even the small things, even as adults, we're just, you know,
we're big
little,
kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We just need a moment. And taking that moment, I was like, you know what? That worked. And I went even less stressed to the meeting without even realizing that, you know?
Less stress, more calm.
That's right. And that's a recovery part, right?
Yes.
It's not the stress that gets us.
Yes, the recovery. That's right.
Inadequate recovery. You look at that same stressful situation very differently after blowing bubbles.
Yeah, and it's the same situation.
Yeah, then if you were like rushing, getting off your phone, walking into that meeting, what kind of energy do you bring to it?
That's right, stress.
And you have to protect your energy. I think that's what she's saying, and being conscious of that. We have to be a safeguard, not just for ourselves, but also others.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
Exactly.
ultimately, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Our existence is making a great impact, and it's making an impact whether we're aware of it, care about it, or want it to do it. It's going to happen. So we might as well take the ownership and say, at this point in time, what can I do to get myself to who I am at my peak? Because that's ultimately where I want to live. I want to thrive.
That's right. And whether that means getting a good workout, getting a good night's sleep, a
whatever
healthy
it is.
snack, whatever it is. I mean, today of all days, I was very cognizant. I want to wake up today and just have positive energy, be joy, whether it's the lady at Dunkin' Donuts.
That's the first thing I felt when I saw you.
Oh,
joy.
good. That's what I'm always hoping for. But whoever you interact with on the today of all days, you know, I don't care who you voted for.
That's right.
I care that you had some sort of positive energy come your way today. What can I give? How can I do? But you can't do that unless you are protecting your energy. That's why I have workout hair this morning. That's not so cute.
It's okay.
I had only so much time to give, right?
But you went and got the workout for you.
Right.
Though. Come
No,
on.
not for me.
Okay.
For you.
Oh, we were seeing that.
Do you see what I mean?
No, but sincerely,
Yeah, like I truly, of course, it's for me and my health,
Wow.
but it's really to be who I need to be. And
in this moment.
exercise is my mission. I mean, I love to. That's my way of channeling and managing my energy. So it's for someone else.
For us.
Yeah, but I think that's
Her best
beautiful,
self.
man. And
To
I was
present
thinking
that. I
about you
love
this
that.
morning during that workout.
isn't that cool? But that speaks a lot.
It's beautiful.
To me, I think it speaks a lot to our audience.
Yes.
Because that's a practical example
Yeah.
of someone living it
Yeah.
and not just teaching it, which we talked about earlier, but we won't talk about now for another conversation.
Right.
But before we go, Doctor, because you have given so many great pieces of wisdom,
Value.
points of
That's
wisdom,
right.
so much value. And
So
you really
much value.
ministered to
Thank you.
us.
Oh,
Thank you.
And my heart
I'll
feels
be assessing
lighter.
this week for sure.
Yeah,
Likewise.
I mean that. I really mean
Likewise.
that. What would you say to the audience if there's another thing you want to leave them with on how to find you, why they will maybe want to work with you, your specialty, that way that we can close it for their thoughts?
Yeah, just we operate in the corporate space, but that doesn't mean that I'm not available for questions. So someone who isn't in a position to make decisions like that, you know, but we, like I said, we offer training programs. We offer professional executive coaching as performance coaching. So it kind of rides that intersection of leadership development and human capacity.
Right.
All the things we've been talking about. We do all of that. So they could reach us at performance-on-purpose.com. I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Dr. Lauren Hodges. I think that's my
handle.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'm on Instagram, but it's just a bunch of pictures of dogs and kids. So it's not very professional. I've not a lot of tidbits on there. But yeah, thank you. That would be a great way. On our website, there's a free stress personality quiz.
That's what we did. Yeah.
So you want freebies? There's a LinkedIn Learning course on the same subject. Just look up my name, and stress personalities is up there too. But yeah, that's if they want to reach me, any questions anybody has, I'm very much available.
Tell them about your book.
Yes, Less Stress, More Calm, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yeah, not a #1 bestseller yet, but I'm working on it.
You're on your way, mama. I can tell you that. You're just making a great impact.
Thank you. And congrats again on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. I know you got something incredible from Dr. Lauren. We got something. I can tell you that we feel filled being in the presence of great people like herself. And please go online, check her out. But without further ado, you know where to find us. Our website will be right here, aspirehigherlife.com. You know about our book, The Flight of Your Life, literally in over 90 countries. It is changing and impacting lives all around the world, and we're so excited to be a part of your journey. Leave us a comment. What are some of the best things you took from this conversation? And let us know if you reach out to Dr. Lauren, because we want to make sure that we facilitate that connection. We're so glad you were here with us. Until next time.